Influence at work isn't reserved for executives or extroverts. It's something anyone can cultivate with intention and clarity. It's about how others experience you, how you frame your ideas, and how you move people towards action. Real influence is quiet confidence paired with strategic communication. And in this episode, we'll explore how to increase your influence in authentic, effective ways so that you can lead with impact no matter your title. Today's guest is Tami Reiss. Tami is an expert on influence-driven leadership. She's a keynote speaker, corporate trainer, and CEO of Leader Within, who helps leaders master influence and maximize impact. By providing easy-to-follow tools like the LEAD framework, Map Your Influence Canvas, and the Confident Communicator GPT, she shares her knowledge in accessible ways worldwide. Her latest passion project is a rhyming illustrated book on leadership. I share new episodes and other tips for managers every week, so be sure to hit that subscribe button, click that bell so you never miss an episode. And here's my conversation with Tami. Thank you so much for joining me today, Tami. I'm so excited to have you here because whenever I get to talk to a friend on my show, it's always extra special. And our topic is also one that is so important and comes up all the time around influencing people and trying to move your work forward and get what you want. So I'm really, really excited for you to be here today.
I'm excited to be here too. And I couldn't agree more. Influence is this superpower that if you can do it, everything in your world gets better. And if you can't, everything is an uphill battle and it doesn't need to be.
Yes, exactly. All right. I was starting with a big picture, right? Which is influence as a concept, because I think a lot of times we feel like we have influence because we have power or authority. And maybe influence is the same, is different. How do you think about it?
So whenever basic laws of physics, right? Inertia and momentum, a body at rest will remain at rest unless forces are acted upon it, right? And so authority can more often push something into motion, and that is a form of influence. You're influencing that thing to move. You're influencing that person to take action. You're influencing that person to make a choice in line with what you want them to. The difference is what happens to that person. When it's just coming from a place of authority and the only reason why they're doing it is because they feel that there's a power dynamic that means they have to do it, they don't feel great about it. When you have used everything other than authority to influence someone, it means that you get them to want to do it. And they feel better about it at the end, which makes them more likely to have done their best work, more likely to be willing to do it again, more likely to have learned how to do it so that you don't have to instruct them in how to do it again or anything else, and to just be smiling about it. And it's no different than you as a person when someone tells you to go take out the trash versus someone says it to you in a way that makes you feel like you want to take out the trash.
Yes. I'm actually, how do I say that to someone who I want them to go take out the trash? How do I do that?
I mean, I had a psychologist at some point who said to me, instead of using could words, C words, can you, to instead use W words, would you, will you? And because that's actually you're not asking them, do they have the ability? You're asking them, would they like to? And that small word choice makes someone either feel like they could be your savior or they're just doing what you told them to.
Yeah. What a small little nuanced shift that sounds so powerful. Wow. Okay. I want to go back though, because you said when we use only power and authority to push something forward, right, it doesn't lead to the best outcomes, even if it gets the job done. If you use all the other things. So what are all these other things that we can use to tap into our influence?
So I think a lot of organizations utilize incentives or goal setting and key results and bonus structures and things like that. And luckily, so many organizations have learned that is productive to a point. But more than anything, people want to feel connected. They want to feel connected to their coworkers. They want to feel connected to the larger purpose. They want to feel connected to their customers and everything else. And so to me, influence starts with recognizing that it's a person. It's a person who has their own psychology, their own needs, their own vision, their own goals. And you need to tap into that because you're getting them to want to do something, not just to do it. And so to get someone to want to do something, it has to be something that's in line with other things that they want.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a 3-step process for that. And I call it map your way to influence. And so M is for manifest. You manifest where you want to go. This beautiful picture of the future that you see where everything's rosy, or at least everything's better. And that could be a process improvement. That could be a new hire. That could be a new product or service that's being launched. That could be a new home, a new city you're moving to, whatever that is. It's something different. There has to be a difference from whatever your current state is. And that's part one. And you draw out that picture. Then A, assess the other person and where they want to go. What drives them? What does their perfect universe of the future of success look like? What is going to get them out of bed in the morning? What is going to leave them with a smile on their face as they lie down at night? And that's a psychological thing. And that takes vulnerability, and that takes cultivation of relationships, and that takes investing in that other person and collaborating with that other person. And so that's why people give you advice to do those things, because what it really does is it opens a door and a window into who is that person. What is going to make them happy? What are their incentives? What are their goals? What is their vision? And so we've manifested our own, we've assessed someone else's and understood that we need to assess every individual's version of that, because we have our own version, and our cubicle neighbor has their own version, and our boss has their own version, and the person who reports, like, everybody has their own version. And we are not a homogenous group, no matter what our titles are or anything else. And so now that we have all these lots of worlds of the future out there, you then promote where you can go together. So when you're choosing to tell this other person or this other group of people about your idea, you take the slices that match the Venn diagram. You take the slices that match the Venn diagram of their ideal spot, their ideal vision for the future. And what you do is you talk about how what you want is what they want. And more than anything, you talk about what they want and how you're going to help them get there through what you were already working on.
Sneaky, but also true.
Yes. And effective.
Yes.
And it's not, I think people think of this as like sly and salesy, and it's not. You're simply finding this common ground that helps someone else recognize that if they put their energy and they put their efforts into this collaborative initiative, and that could just be them saying, I agree, we should give resources to that. They don't even necessarily need to do much more than that, that they will also benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be true. Like, you can't say it's going to happen and then not have it happen, because then you lose trust and it's not going to work the next time. So it has to be real.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you have a story from your life or from a client who's kind of used this approach and can show us what it looks like in real life.
So I gave a training to a group of designers, and they were frustrated because the engineers, the product managers, the business people, everyone else's opinion seemed to matter more than theirs. And they had done the research on the customers, on the users, and they were really frustrated as to why they weren't being involved in more strategic conversations. And so I taught them about this map the influence steps. And some of them have emailed me about how they now use it to advocate for their presence in a conversation. And not a matter of they want to be part of the meeting, but that designers and UX researchers provide insights that get everywhere where they want to go. Everyone wants to develop products which the customers love. Everyone wants to develop products which will sell. Everyone wants to develop products that will serve a need. And they have an understanding of that need. So why not bring them in earlier? And they've now been able to tell stories of how, as they've done that, they've had more impact. And the products that are launched have more traction. And that creates momentum, because an object in motion will remain in motion.
Yes, yes. And I can totally see how asking to be at the table and saying, like, please involve us, like, we have lots of value to add, is not nearly as compelling as you're trying to do this thing and we have insights that correlate to this thing. So bring us in. I want to help you. Exactly.
Let me help you be successful. Like, and you said, I want to be in this thing. How often in work is it not even I want to be part of this meeting? It's you didn't invite me to the meeting. Mm-hmm. Aggressively, I'm going to tell you, you did something wrong. So I make you defensive.
Yes, yes. Well, then when it comes to meetings, we also have the, oh, thank God I wasn't invited to that meeting, in fairness. But then you still have to live with all the outcomes of it, which can be really frustrating on its own part. So yes. It's a tricky situation.
I want to be part of the strategic meeting. I don't want to be part of the update meeting. I want to be part of the strategic meeting. And so how do you advocate for your place there?
Yes. And I love this process because it's so simple. I'm wondering if you can give us a little more on the manifest side. Like, do we need to be crafting a story and a compelling vision that we can kind of, explain how all the magic that's going to happen? And or can it also be removal of pain points? Like, this terrible thing is going to happen if we don't. Does it work to have a manifestation that is in the kind of defense of a negative thing happening? Or does it have to be only positive? Or can it be kind of anything as long as it feels relevant and meaningful to the work?
I think to a certain degree, it's anything, but a lot of people will tell you carrots work better than sticks. And so if you talk about not, we can avoid a disaster, but we can be more successful. We can build up our brand. We can, all the positives. And you can say it'll also remove a pain point or avoid a potential pitfall, be more smooth sailing sort of stuff. But to answer the beginning part of your question, like how much are you beefing something up? That depends on how big of an idea it is, right? Like when Leah Hickman is pitching Adobe that they need to go from a licensed product to a SaaS product, that's like everything. Everybody's involved. But more than anything, I want you to think past the item you want. So for instance, if you want to change a process at work, you think that there should be an additional approval that happens or one less approval that happens in a process, or that someone else should be included earlier on, or there should be an additional question on something, right? That's the thing. But what's the result you're hoping to get from it? What's the downstream impact of that question being answered, of the meeting being on Tuesday, of the approval being removed? Does it make things faster? Right? If it's added, does it mean that there's less of a chance of a security breach? Why are you even wanting this change? Because there are dominoes that fall afterwards. What are the ripples that happen after yours? Because that is the picture around it. That's what happens once the change has happened. And those ripples are what you need to understand so that you can promote this thing to somebody else. Because some of those ripples are going to impact the sales team, and some of those ripples are going to impact the customer success team, and some of those ripples are going to impact the financial team or anything else.
I'm so glad that you kind of articulated that it's not about the thing. And I'm imagining times in the past where I've wanted something, and it's when you focus so much on the thing, it becomes a debate about that thing and not about the bigger picture. And I'm guessing in a lot of cases, right, your manager doesn't care about is there an extra question here or there? Or your team member doesn't care about whether or not there's a extra step in this process, right? What they care about is that bigger picture. So that kind of blends nicely into how do you find the overlap? Because they might care about the big picture, but they probably don't care in the same way about the details.
So what's interesting is you're absolutely right. But what they do care about is people hate change. So you're going to find resistance to change. And so by helping them see what's on the other end of this change, it can actually be something they welcome, something they're excited about. And if you ignore that they don't want change, right, you're going to just keep hitting walls.
I have seen that in action, as I'm sure many of us have. So let's talk a little bit more about how you understand what other people want, right? Because it's an easy mindset. We've kind of all probably heard the saying, right? You got to think about like, what's in it for me, right? But I'm getting the sense that like that's part of what you're talking about in the assess mode, but it's something even bigger than that. So how would we go about really understanding what people care about, what's important to them, especially when it relates to the vision that we have and not just a kind of generic, oh, I know this person only cares about efficiency. Oh, I know that person like loves, technology. So if I can just, wedge this into something.
Cutting edge technology,
right?
Come on.
Cutting edge technology, yes.
So I think it comes from the nature of cultivating a relationship, right? It's a matter of collaborating with them on projects, asking them questions. Why are you choosing to do this? Why are you choosing to do something else? And investing the time in getting to know them, why they make certain choices in a respectful fashion, not in a judgy, why'd you do that? But hey, I want to learn more about how you made that choice. It was a really great idea. What assessment did you make that brought you there? Et cetera, et cetera. And then there's the nature of giving. You have to give them your time. You're asking them to give you their time or their social capital or their trust. And so the more you give, the more you will hopefully get in return. There's an article I wrote a while ago called "Can You Be a Yes Person If You're a Product Person?" Because product people are often the people who say no or not yet. Like we're taught to say not yet, like not right now. But in reality, I think you can be a yes person, but it's not saying yes to doing something. It's saying yes to giving someone your time, to do the thought exploration of this idea with someone, and giving someone 5 minutes of your time makes them feel awesome. And giving them advice that's like, oh, you should go talk to Sue about this or Bob about this. He also has this passion. The more you become a networking hub of information and a connector, the more social capital you've built and trust you've built and relationships and connections you've built, so that when you're not sure what maybe you haven't assessed someone enough. You don't know enough about that specific person, what their needs are, what drives them. Maybe there's someone else who does. And so you can ask them and say, hey, I'm about to pitch the CFO on XYZ. When you, who I have a relationship with, gave a presentation to the CFO, what kind of questions did they ask? What should I be sure to include? And that's one thing where you can leverage somebody to help other people can help you assess. But also sometimes through these relationships, you recognize you're not the right person to actually do the promotion.
Oh.
That so often we think we need to be the person who gives the pitch, when in reality, it can actually be someone else who's developed trust and social capital in a particular group, because if you present it, it will fall on deaf ears. It will fall flat. But they will be able to reach those other people and inspire them and motivate them and influence them to take action.
Oh my gosh, I love this so much. And I think as managers, it's so different when we come into the room because of the fact that we have the role authority, that when we, even if we're trying to use good influencing approaches, it can still sometimes feel like it doesn't really matter because we're still going to have to do what the boss says. But if you have another team member who loves this idea or is going to take a lead on this aspect of the project, right? Empowering them to talk to their colleagues, to make a pitch, take some of that power dynamic away and give space for more authentic influence to happen. And you can still be part of that conversation, but I love this idea that it doesn't have to just be you. If you have others who are championing something or colleagues who are looking for opportunities to present, that you can give them some space and some guidance. I love this so much.
And this is something I've given as advice to a lot of my executive coaching clients. Like when they're trying to solve a problem, change a process, whatever, include one of their team members in it, if not multiple team members. They can actually say to a few of their direct reports, hey, there's something wrong with this process. This is the challenge I'm seeing. Will you do some research? Like, is this also a challenge to you? First, they have to actually believe it's also a problem, right? It's also a problem. So they're bought in. Yes. Are you down to help me, your boss? Because you like to help me, right? I'm not telling you to do something. Are you down to invest some time to help me in solving this problem? Yeah, we'd be down to that. Great. Will you do some research about what's really going on and provide me some options for how we can do this? How we can improve this? Because then when you present to your team the change, these two people were part of the process. We included two of you. And do you remember when they sat down with you and watched you do something? That was because they were doing user research.
Yes. We don't have to go it alone. So important. All right. Let's talk a little bit about how you actually find that overlap, right? When we have our visions, we kind of know what somebody else wants. Do we need to, therefore, do things like have numbers ready or I don't know. I'm trying to imagine, or maybe you have a story that can kind of articulate this a little bit better, where we can really hone in on those different visions and how they can kind of come together.
So I'm going to tell you a story from very early in my career, but it wasn't necessarily planned, but it's a good example of how there are lots of aspects to things. And if you know about them, you can find different vehicles for common ground. Because some people are going to require numbers and charts, and some people are going to require user interviews, and some people are going to require that you show up with the leader of a different organization who's got your back. And they're going to say, yes, this works for the service organization. Yes, this works for the technology organization or whatever else, because sometimes it isn't only you, right? And sometimes it's a teamwork. We talked about this. But we're talking about 2009. So I'm in my first-ish job, second-ish job. And I was in charge of a really large initiative at Cornerstone On Demand. And my job was to create what was called the Data Import Wizard. And it was this tool that was going to be a way where our clients could import their data from spreadsheets. And the CEO, Adam Miller, who I love dearly, really wanted the type of data that we imported first to be learning data. So transcripts, it's a learning management system, transcripts, courses from whatever system our clients were migrating from. Because if we could make migration easier, that would be great. And there were so many man hours being invested in consulting and data transformations and all of these things. And they would delay someone going live. And the longer a customer took to go live, the more frustrated they got, all of these things. Great perspective. I had the perspective that the first set of data we should do was actually about the people, the employees, their manager relationships, things of that sort. And that was based on my my perspective that that would help out all of our clients, because eventually, yes, most clients had a data feed, but I was also in charge of the small business group and they never had a data feed. So they needed this tool. Beyond that, whenever a client's data feed was broken, we didn't have an alternative to have like a back door for them. And this would provide a back door for them. And so that's what I was presenting as my case against the CEO. I was not going to win. Like, let me be clear. I was not going to win. There was no data point that I was going to be able to provide because he had in his mind the cost associated with this other stuff was just too much. And randomly, one day while we were discussing this, the CFO and one of the CEO's co-founders was around and he heard what we were talking about. And he said, wait a minute. You can provide a tool that will allow for customers to import their employees? And I said, yeah, that's what we're working on. And he said, we need to do that. And I said, why? And he said, well, if we have that technology, technically, when we provide the software to our customers, we have provided them complete software. They no longer need to go through an implementation to have functional software, because they can do this themselves. And so we can recognize revenue the second we give them their URL. We no longer need them to sign off, which could take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year and a half. And so from a CFO's perspective, revenue recognition at a SaaS company is a big deal. I had no idea what he was talking about at the time. And I can't tell you how many people have never heard the term revenue recognition. Because unless you work in accounting or finance,
Probably
like it's
not a thing.
really. And so that was the thing that tipped the scales in my favor. And so you don't always know what it's going to be, but you can see how there's a ripple effect. And the more you can talk about the whole picture, the more there's possibility of seeing how there's positive impacts and this like together benefit for other groups and teams with different perspectives.
Oh my gosh, I love this story so much. So much. But unfortunately, we are running out of time. So Tami, can you tell us about a great boss that you've worked for and what made this person such a fabulous manager?
So I'll talk about, often I talk about Adam Miller because I think he's actually fantastic and he did really great things. But there's a woman named Camila Velasquez, who's now actually the general manager at New York Times Cooking. And she was the SVP of product at JustWorks while I worked there. And she did a few things in our tenure together that were really fantastic. But one of them was teaching me something that I teach other people all the time, which is that the success of any initiative is the byproduct, like multiplication product, of the percentage right the idea is and the percentage buy-in the team has. And so you could be 100% right about your idea, but have 10% buy-in and it's not going to be a success. But you don't have to be entirely right. But if you have more buy-in, you have better chance of success. And that lesson is huge for me. But she knew I needed to hear that. There were lots of other things that she knew I needed to hear that she helped me hear. But that specific one around, I wanted to be successful. I wanted to have impact. And as she said, I often knew the right answer. But unless I worked on bringing other people along, it wasn't going very far.
Oh my gosh, such a great insight. I love that formula and its simplicity. And now tell us, Tami, where can people follow you, keep up with your work, and learn more?
So the first thing you need to know is how to spell my name. Tami, Tami from Miami, spelled the same way. And Reiss, Reiss. It should be Rice, but it's not. And so when you spell those two things correctly, you can find me anywhere on LinkedIn, TamiReiss.com, Substack, like you name it, you can find me. And I am constantly sharing tidbits like what we just did today in writing, in videos, because I honestly want people to find that moment that clicks for them, that helps them get where they want to go. And that's why I'm here.
Yay. Well, thank you again so much for joining me today. Really a pleasure and such good takeaways.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a fabulous time.